Welcome to The Real Life Buyer. In this podcast, you will discover interviews with procurement and technical experts, business owners, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders. These experts will help you to develop and grow, accelerate your career, improve your business, save money, and buy smart. Now introducing The Real Life Buyer, Dave Barr.
Hello and welcome to The Real Life Buyer. Today I'm excited to reintroduce you to Iain Greenwood, owner of 4G Water. Iain and I have known each other for a few years now. When Iain was employed, he took the brave step to launch his own business in 2017, providing the service of ensuring commercial water supplies were maintained and safe to use and drink in both businesses and public facilities. Iain also joined me on my second podcast, and in fact, my very first interview of a guest. So today, well over a year later now, we're going to discuss how the past year has impacted 4G Water and how 4G have survived and thrived throughout the pandemic and the ensuing political turmoil. So without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome Iain back onto the podcast. Hello, Iain.
Hi, Dave. I'm delighted to be here again over a year later. And we've managed to have our hair cut since then as well. I think you mentioned last time we were looking a bit, mine had a wave. I'm not sure how yours was, but that was when the barbers were unfortunately sat at home.
Yeah, it was a quick challenge. And unfortunately, mine's falling out as well. So I've got a double whammy, but never mind.
Well, yeah, I'm not far behind.
Okay, cool. Right, let's start by explaining to the listeners exactly what services your business delivers to its customers and how 4G keeps employees and customers safe and owners out of the courtroom.
Well, firstly, I don't ever mention the courtroom on a first meeting with a client, but so we carry out all things regarding water hygiene and water treatment. So if you supply water to your staff, or if you have a company with a building that supplies water to your staff or clients or general public, the HSE says you have to have a Legionella risk assessment. That's all they say you have to have. So we carry those out for companies and public and private bodies. And part of that risk assessment would be to give you a traffic light warning of how much risk there is regarding Legionella in your building. So we would go to all the darkest corners of the building, all the locked doors, all the supply cupboards that are now full of buckets or boxes or whatever that have a toilet in the back that doesn't get used anymore. And we would point those out and we'd deliver a traffic light, whether it's red, whether you need to do lots of things now, amber, whereas there's a few bits you need to consider, or green, you've got a very safe environment. On the back of those, you would have recommendations of the things you need to do in order to reduce the risk or mitigate the risk of Legionella in your systems. And we carry those out for you as well. So we have a fleet of engineers all over the south of England that are carrying out all sorts of remedial actions for our clients.
Okay, so your customers' businesses then obviously were impacted in multiple ways. And no doubt the ways that they didn't have any contingency plans for. So they probably thought just turning off the water, closing the doors and heading home during the lockdown was okay. But in reality, that really wasn't the solution. So if we can look firstly from a customer's perspective, what problems did the pandemic cause and highlight that they may not have anticipated?
Well, at the start, it was a surprise to everyone. And nobody really knew what to do or how to handle it. We all saw the same briefing at 8:00 by Boris Johnson on the same day. And I noticed that I went up to South London the following day and we probably saw about 7 or 8 cars on the entire journey. And if you know the south of England, on a weekday morning, it's, bumper to bumper traffic all the way through. But So, a lot of people took the lockdown very seriously to start with, and indeed through it. But the thing I noticed where it said on the briefing that if you can't work from home, or if you can work from home, work from home. And obviously we can't work from home because we're on our client sites. So we took the opinion that everything was pretty well the same for us. We took all the, recommended precautions such as face masks, gloves. We had all that PPE anyway as part of our day-to-day business. For our clients, a lot of the public bodies that we work for, so schools, councils, things like that, they were brilliant. I think out of the 80 schools we look after, only one postponed a job. First, they said, look, we don't, because there was the 2-3 days, wasn't there, after that, of meetings, being held, like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And we had that as well. We're quite flexible, thankfully. And I actioned my admin to just rebook every job and just contact all of our clients and just make sure the jobs were going ahead. And for the schools and the councils, I think, like I say, there was one school which postponed a job for a couple of weeks because they didn't know what was happening, but that ended up being delivered a couple of weeks later. As for the private sector, it was slightly different. So we look after about a dozen hotels as well. And some of those hotels, again, one of them phoned me up the following day and said, what do we need to do? I don't often get phone calls like that asking what do we need to do. And I gave them the advice and they carried on as normal with the servicing that we give them. And in fact, because of the lack of footfall through their properties, stagnation is a big issue in our industry. It's one of the causing factors of Legionella. And the less people you have using sinks, toilets, wash hand basins, kitchens, hotel rooms, things like that, the more problems you're going to get, without a doubt. It's you can look at the statistics and it's unarguable. So they actually had to up their game a little bit. And I felt sorry for a lot of these places because there was a lot of big schools, big colleges, big hotels. And the Legionella Control Association, in line with the HSE, came out with, okay, well, we now have to look at things slightly differently at the moment. So how are we going to put this out to the nation of what everyone should be doing during the lockdown to keep their water supplies clean? And they came out with, and I totally agreed with it, that before, if you had a little used outlet or an unused outlet, you'd have to flush it weekly. And they came out and said you have to simulate usage, which what would mean is if you have a school of 800 children, you would have to simulate the usage of 800 children 5 days a week just to make sure that things were running as they were before. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the private sector went furlough crazy at the beginning. I think that's well known. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. And there was less staff to carry out these duties, even though there was more duties to carry out. So whereas a lot of the customer service staff had been furloughed, some of the maintenance teams in a lot of these places had been as well, because I guess the owners thought, or the managers thought, if there's less clients coming through the door, less customers, then there'll be less need for a maintenance team. Unfortunately, as we know, as you know, doing what you do, that's not the case, and maintenance carries on regardless of what's happening. So we had a few issues getting hold of our clients first off, because sometimes even my client, so the facilities manager or the hotel manager or whoever it might be, even the finance team had been furloughed. So also getting bills paid was an issue because they were working maybe 1 day a week. So, you contact them on a Wednesday and you get an email back saying we only work Tuesdays. So then they'd respond on a Tuesday, and by the time you get back to it, they're off for another week. So, and also with suppliers as well, we were finding the same issue, and that they'd furloughed everyone, but they found they've got the exact same amount of work coming through the door. So let's go back to the question. Everyone dealt with it differently. Like I say, a lot of the public sector were excellent. They held meetings, kept you up to date as to what they wanted. Some of the councils, for example, in a council contract, you have a whole myriad of different properties. You not only have the council office, but you also have pavilions, public toilets. Those pavilions are sports pavilions, so those were shut for a long time. And what they actually did for the vast majority of those is shut them and isolated them completely for a year and a half, or a year at least, because there was no football season, not in the lower sort of grassroots leagues. And it was, obviously theatre, maybe the local theatre is part of the contract, which it is in our case for a couple of our councils that we look after. And it varied right across. And we often found that they didn't have contingency plans, obviously, because this was unprecedented, which I think was the word of the year last year. And it was just the transparency of it was key. to be transparent with your suppliers and clients as to what you were doing. So, yeah, just turning the water off, closing the doors and heading home wasn't the best solution. And for many of our, well, not for many of our clients, for the small minority of our clients that did that, it ended up to be an absolute nightmare when they came to open again. Because the clients that did keep up with the monthly monitoring and checking and Legionella sampling and what have you, when time came for them to open up, because a lot of the time it was 2 weeks notice sometimes that they could open back up. And, we're on plan D, plan E, whatever it might be at the time, because they had everything in place, they could just open up. Whereas the clients of ours that didn't keep that maintenance plan going found that they had delayed opening times or delayed opening dates because they then had to do 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks of work to get to the point where they were allowed to open up from a health and safety standpoint.
Okay. So if I just do a quick summary then, just because there's a lot of information in there, you're saying basically the public sector were pretty organised, knew they had to carry on with the routines, the regimes, the procedures and processes, even though they weren't behaving in a normal manner. Where it came to the private sector, where staff were furloughed and sent home, those sort of activities that we're used to significantly reduced or even perhaps stopped in some cases because people weren't there or they're in a very limited capacity and working from home. Would that be a very succinct summary of that situation?
Yeah. And now these hotels and places have opened back up. And, I can talk to them face to face nowadays, even without a mask. And they all tell their own, the staff, the general staff working on the floor, doing the nuts and bolts and holding the place together. They all have the same story. They said they got furloughed for 4 or 5 months and then they were called up to come back in and sort of to open up in 2 weeks, which, as you know, if you've got supply chains and things like that with a hotel, to get everything back up and running is near impossible. So I think that, like I say, the companies and especially the councils and the schools that do have the sort of command chain in place is to go, right, well, let's carry on doing what we can do, and also asking the experts in the field what they should be doing and being transparent about their decisions really helped everyone, because also you could see the problems that might be coming down the road for them and mitigate those long before it needed dealing with. So you could plan in advance, whereas throwing your phone in a drawer because you've been furloughed didn't really help anyone.
Right. So you're left with quite a dilemma. You've got a number of commercial clients that weren't really aware of their responsibilities in this kind of situation, because you say it was something that everybody was completely unfamiliar with. But you had to somehow communicate what they should have been doing to those people that were, in many cases, only available perhaps once a week. And of course, then you had to try and help them prepare and be ready for when the grand opening day, or days, as it happens a number of times, came about. So how did you communicate and prepare those customers for when they were able to reopen? So because I'm no doubt you had probably a wave of business, as you can see, heading your way when everybody wants to reopen all at the same time, and you've only got so many engineers.
Yeah. So, I mean, for the companies that wanted to, or the schools or what have you, the schools was, I think I mentioned it in our last podcast, because it had just happened at that point where the schools were allowed to reopen all of a sudden. And we just had to, everything non-essential, put on the back burner and put everything that we had to do at the front of the schedule and just get it done one way or another. Yes, fortunately, in our industry, we have to do that sometimes. So, for example, if your company has an issue that's incredibly important to deal with right now, we would have to phone someone we've scheduled in to do PPM work, just standard scheduled maintenance, and put them off for a couple of days to get the emergency job, if you see what I mean. So that as long as it all gets done within a time frame, we're quite flexible in changing things around to suit the client. But yes, we did have large influxes of work during the times that companies and various, because it was the schools and the hotels and then this and then that and then that all came along in a big chain of events. And luckily we could see things coming down the line. So we handled our engineers appropriately and put them in the right places at the right time, thankfully. But no, going back to what you said first, we did grow through the pandemic because of this. And I understand a lot of companies didn't do so well, but I think for a lot of the health and safety side of things, then that side of the country did sort of, certainly PPE manufacturers, gloves were like currency at one point. So so from customers' perspective, the problems of the pandemic, it did highlight communication issues throughout their organization, without a doubt.
Okay. So hopefully now we've seen the back of the pandemic pretty much. I'd be very surprised if we go back into any further lockdowns. So therefore, your customers now must be a lot more aware, and their procedures, their processes, and I suspect their behaviors have changed quite a bit as well. Can you explain the kind of things that you've seen as a consequence of going through this for those types of businesses?
I think a lot, like I say, the ones that carried on straight through, even though if they didn't carry on, they carried on carrying out their health and safety checks. The ones that didn't are still finding their feet. And I wouldn't say at the moment that for those companies, especially in the hospitality sector, that they are back to normal. I think they're back to normal, the tills are ringing again, but I think they're still incredibly busy just trying to get over what has happened, if you see what I mean. And the trouble is with health and safety and facilities management, you need budget. And a lot of these guys, they've had their budget absolutely hammered in the last year and a half. And I completely understand that as a supplier to them. And that's something you have to, get around at some point and say to them, look, I hear of clients at the moment on the phone to me recently saying, look, we need this. We just don't have the money. And that, unfortunately, sometimes that isn't an excuse because, it's not my responsibility to sort out their financial issue. It's my responsibility to make sure that they're covered legally through their water hygiene processes. We have had a lot of meetings with a lot of the of our clients recently, just to make sure everything, we sort of pressed a reset button with all of them and say, right, let's start again. Let's just start again. Start from scratch. We'll carry out a Legionella risk assessment. We'll do a disinfection of the building. We'll take Legionella samples. We'll see how all those go. And then we'll sit back down with all the results. And then we'll come up with an action plan to go forward and then see what happens. And that's been they've been responding quite well with that.
So just two things that have interested me, which I've heard. As I see, a number of businesses did utilise the furlough scheme. I guess in your case, did you need to use that at all? And if you did you find it very useful? Or were all your guys basically on the ground all the time?
We were very fortunate. We didn't have to use any of the furlough scheme or any of the other funding things. Our company literally carried on as normal. In fact, there was an uptick during the periods of reopening. Like I say, we took some knocks with our hotel clients, but fortunately, we're more weighted towards the public sector. So, and like I say, all those carried on as normal.
Yeah.
So no, fortunately, we didn't have to deal with the furlough scheme.
Fantastic. That's good. But now you mentioned the uptick, which obviously there's a lot of businesses very busy at the moment, and the word on the street is recruitment. How have you found it in trying to recruit new competent people since everybody's started to come back out of their homes?
Well, now everyone's back. Before, we tried to recruit last year and with not much luck because everyone was either fortunate or feeling fortunate to be in a job, or they were furloughed and getting 80% by not going to work. So I totally agree. Why would you go back to work for the extra 20%? Why would you work 40 hours a week for 20% more money? So recruitment was difficult last year, but since everyone's gone back, we've been recruiting and we've hired some new additions to the company. And we found that to get over the skills gap, and I think there is a skills gap in our industry, not only have we been training from within, so upskilling our current engineers to carry out more complicated and involved tasks, but we've been recruiting at a higher level as well. So also they need upskilling as well, everyone needs training. So when we have recruited, we've recruited high to make sure that there is no skills gap in our company. And we've just carried on making sure their skills matrix is nice and full, and all our auditing procedures, making sure they're kept on their toes, and that we can provide a better service to our clients.
Okay. The other things that the pandemic did for a lot of companies was to encourage them to innovate, do things in a different way they hadn't done before. And sometimes that meant investing in new technologies and various other things. What kind of things, if any, did you end up changing your business model by? And what's had the biggest impact, would you say, as a result of those changes?
We were fortunate in the fact that we started in 2017. And so everything that we've done has been internet-based. So all our reporting, all our scheduling, our logbooks now are internet-based. We no longer have paper logbooks. So everything we've done, even before the pandemic, was I've always worked from my home anyway, but my admin, when I hired her prior to the pandemic, she was working from home simply to save costs for the company. Also, if I had an office, I'd have to go there every day. And I prefer the commute to my office and my house than that. So, keep your costs low, things like that. So our company's always been geared to mobile working from home, using the technology available. It's very cheap nowadays. You don't have to spend however much on developing anymore. Pretty well everything is off the shelf. So it takes a bit of time to research what's best for your company. But we've chosen a CRM, which works well for us. Customer Relationship Manager program works well for us. All our engineers know where to go and what they should be doing, and we know where they are and what they are doing. And also that ties in with our online logbook. So once a job's completed, it's immediately on the client's logbook, timestamps, signature, everything they need to know, all available for them immediately from wherever they are. So even they don't have to go to the office anymore. And that works well. We have a few clients that have multiple sites. And in the old days, I'm still going back to, 6 months ago, companies are still providing paper logbooks and having to update the files on site. And if you need to audit a logbook, you'd have to drive to the site to do that. Whereas now everything is available at my desk and also my admin's desk and my operations supervisor's desk. And we can, if there's an issue or we just like to check through something, we can just do it from the comfort of our home. And I trust all my engineers and staff to work 8 hours a day, and I'm sure they do. I know there's been a lot of talk about people can't work from home and they're less productive. I actually find I'm myself am more productive working in the comfort of my own home. And I've been told from my staff that they are as well. So as regarding new technology we've started to roll out remote monitoring for temperature monitoring. So this is a technology that's been around for a couple of decades. It's developed. It used to be good, but the problem was that to install it, you need an electrician. Because it all needs to be hardwired, and it looked awful. It was massive boxes and things like this. Whereas now, because of battery technology has come on so far, it's all wireless. As you can imagine, everything's wireless nowadays. So, and it hides away under the sink or wherever it might be in the plant room. And the dashboards for it are, in my opinion, amazing. I've seen quite a few dashboards in my life, client dashboards and things like that, but it's really good. And what that means for our clients is we don't have to go there at the moment, and before we would have to visit each site every month, do the temperature monitoring just to make sure they weren't in the range of producing bacteria levels. And now we can do that again from our desks, and we can give the client a login as well, so everything's completely transparent. So we're not hiding the bad data or showing off the bad data to say you need to spend more money. All the information that we have, they have as well. So it generates more trust between us and the client. Also, the price of it has come down remarkably. So in a lot of cases, we can budget it within what they are currently paying for our engineers to turn up. So we can have the equipment installed and run it at a cost the same as what they were paying before. So there's no, what's the return on investment is we're still doing the same task, we're just doing it in a different way. And what that means to us as a company is that less miles on the road, less CO2 through the borough of whichever council has organised the equipment to be put in, or the school. I mean, we estimated some of our sites, if we put it in, we would save 1,000, 2,000 miles a year by not going there to do the monthly temperature monitoring. So we're always looking to new developments like that. That there is a lot of products out there, and as you know, being the real life buyer, that some of them are better than others. And sometimes you look at a product and go, "That's a good solution," but it's not going to work for us immediately. Whereas with the products we've selected now, they tie perfectly in with our business model, and our clients really like them as well. Because it's also, these things generate 24-hour monitoring. So when we used to go do the temperature monitoring, it would be a snapshot of one hour of one day of 1 month. Whereas this gives you a timeline of the entire usage of that outlet, or whatever it might be, whether it be the incoming mains or a tank temperature. It gives you 24-hour coverage 7 days a week. And it generates nice graphs and highlights issues and whatnot. So, so technology like that has definitely been a game changer for us. Something we're starting to push out to our clients to try and get them to do it more.
Yeah. Is there interest on that? Is that issue an alert system? So if a temperature, let's say, exceeds the limits, do you get an active alert on behalf of your client, or does the client get anything at the moment, or is that a little bit later down the line?
Yeah, you can set it up to do email alerts or text message alerts, however you want to do it. All these things can be changed, and however you want to set it up in your working practices. You could have it only email you once a month or once a week. Because you can imagine, if every time a temperature's out of spec, it emails you, it'll be going off all the time. So you can have it set up however way you want it.
Sounds really good. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
One other thing, sorry, just say one other thing we're looking at as well. So there's a thing called pre-treatment as well. So it generates the biocide on site. And what it does, if you've got a property that's got inherently poor bacteriological results, month in, month out, or whatever it might be, and you've done everything you can do and it's still the same. So a good example is we look after a 300-year-old school, and they were having inherently bad Legionella results every month. And the problem with this is that it's 300 years old. There's wood paneling everywhere. Believe it or not, they wouldn't let us rip up the wood paneling to find any dead legs of pipework or anything like that, or what the issues might be. So that would be plan A. You would get rid of all the problems, but unfortunately we weren't allowed access to find the problems because of the nature of the building. So the plan B is, okay, well, let's treat the water coming in. So what you can do, you can put an analyte generator on the incoming mains that will treat the water coming into. The water coming into the building is proven to be bacteria free. So then what you do is you run the taps a lot for a month or two, just to make sure it's all flushed through and all running smoothly. And the great thing about that equipment is that previously as well, you've had to turn up with chemical, deliver it, dose it, things like this. And then you've got problems with kosh as well that you've got to deal with. Whereas this generator generates the biocide on site in the little box and doses it into the system automatically. Also, what it does, if it needs servicing, it emails you. So there's no even, strict PPM for it. So you're not turning up every month or whatever it might be, regardless of how it's performing. You're only turning up if you need to go there to service it. If there's a fault or it's 80% towards need, like your car, it tells you it needs a service in 1,000 miles, same sort of thing. So it emails you when it needs a service, and then you can schedule it in. So again, saving mileage, saving all sorts of disruption, time on site, things like this.
Yeah, and it sounds like it makes everything a lot safer for use all the time, because instead of dosing and walking away and things gradually, shall we say, migrating to how they were before, this is constantly being managed properly.
Yeah, it's constantly monitoring itself, and then you can click on the analysis and take it from, because it's on the Internet of Things, and you can view the dashboard and go in from your dashboard at home and see how it's performing, instead of having to go there to find out.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. And it's great, as you say, from a carbon footprint perspective as well. So we're saving the environment all at the same time. Lovely, lovely. The other things that it's been happening that I've certainly seen, and it's been well publicized on the television, is that businesses are being affected by availability of products. They're in short supply. Lead times are going out further than they used to. They're not on the shelf anymore, and therefore you have to wait longer for your products. And also that costs are increasing quite significantly. Are you being impacted by those things?
We tend to operate a kind of just-in-time system. It's not as precise as BMW, or anything like that. But we only store stock for as much as we need for the upcoming jobs that we've got coming up. So we don't have mountains of stock in our stores, which as a result of that, we have very small stores, which again reduces the costs to the company. So as for chemicals and things like that, obviously PPE was, it like I said before, at the start of the pandemic, it was like currency. But now things have calmed down an awful lot, and now there's mountains of PPE everywhere you go. They're giving it away for free in some places. But as regarding fittings and copper and, plumbing bits and pieces, definitely, without a doubt, price of copper has gone through the roof. Also, there is shortages. You're having to go from shop to shop to try and find parts. We've had to up our prices to our clients, unfortunately, because of it. We have a quote template, and we realized that the parts we were buying were more expensive than what we were selling them for to the client at one point. So we did have to regrettably up our prices for the copper. But fortunately, we've managed to keep our labour rates the same. So no, without a doubt, regarding plumbing bits and pieces, yes. Regarding chemicals, we haven't seen an effect personally because we don't get vast volumes in one go. We drip feed it into the company, and our suppliers are all UK based as well. So I haven't heard of any. I think they have upped their prices, but only incrementally. So they said the raw ingredients have got more expensive. But like I say, because it's drip feeding into us, we're not really seeing, massive sky high prices in the chemical because we're only getting bits at a time anyway. But yeah, for sure for copper. And I think maybe a lot of pipe fitters and plumbers out there will be saying the same as well.
Yeah. And to top all this, we also had the challenge of fuel supply problems. Now, as you've explained, have a number of engineers that are traveling around the country, and to suddenly be told that suddenly there's no fuel in the pump must have caused you some real concerns. How did you cope through that difficult week or two that we really had struggles to get fuel out of a petrol station?
I was deeply worried because as a boss sat there, the phone call from the engineer is one of the worst phone calls you can get. But they were so grown up about it. I didn't receive one phone call saying we can't get fuel or we can't do this job. They put themselves out and they queued for 45 minutes to get 30 quid of fuel, which for a transit is a day or day and a half. Some of these engineers are traveling 100 miles in a morning to get to a job. So that would be their day's worth of fuel. And then they'd have to do it again the following day. But no, they were all so grown up about it and just did it and just got on with it. And it was interesting watching their trackers just going from petrol station to petrol station trying to find fuel. So I had no input at all. They just got on with it themselves and they knew what the situation was and they just got fuel as and when they could. I think I might have sent a WhatsApp group message out saying, look, if you're under half a tank, just go fill up. I know that's against the advice the government was giving, but we still have to go out and service our clients. So, it was a case of there might not be fuel tomorrow at your local station. So make sure you've got enough fuel for as long as you can. I don't think that's classed as panic buying by any stretch because we were genuinely going through the fuel. It wasn't a case of we were filling up jerry cans or something and we go to the shop once a week. It was, these transits, they do go through quite a lot of diesel on a daily basis. So, like I say, I couldn't have been prouder for our engineers at that time because I didn't receive a single phone call. None of our jobs were delayed or disrupted. They just sat in queues for a couple of weeks. So, yeah, that's how we dealt with it, I guess. It's we just let our engineers get on with it.
Great. That's great. It's great to see. So there's a couple of little questions I want to ask you first for information for people before we ask one final one. The first one is, how can people find out more about you, your company? How can buyers, facilities managers, and business owners learn more about what you can do for them?
So, for example, if you need a Legionella risk assessment, which if you're in charge of looking after a property with water, you will do. You can contact us at www.4gwater.co.uk. We're on LinkedIn. Just search for 4G Water Limited, number 4, letter G, Water Limited. Or you can call us on 0800 170 7048. And we're more than happy to talk through, even if you just have questions. We don't charge for our time, it's just asking questions. So and we're more than happy to come around and give you a survey and go through, even if you have some bits and pieces, or even if you have nothing, we're more than happy to have a meeting and sit down and discuss your requirements and anything you need to help you become compliant.
Okay. And for those people who like to sort of gen up a little bit before they have a meeting, become aware of the basics that people need to learn and understand as a business owner, what's the sort of right places should they go to become a little bit more informed that's perhaps not overly techie?
The HSE, if you go on their website, the website's very grim, but they do have some very good information on there, and they have leaflets on there as well. So I don't know, you probably know as well, if you type in Legionella into the HSE's website, they've got a leaflet for building owners, they've got a leaflet for landlords, they've got a leaflet for facilities managers, they've got a leaflet for our industry. And it is very bullet pointy and very helpful, and it's not thick blocks of text. It is very helpful. So I can't recommend the HSE's website enough. But I say they could change the color a little bit from what it is at the moment. But also in our industry, we have the Legionella Control Association. So if you Google the Legionella Control Association, all the information is on there of what you need to look out for. Also on their website, they have everyone who is a member of the Legionella Control Association, which, as I mentioned in my previous podcast, we are members of. And they set a very high bar as to what a water hygiene provider should be doing. And the bar is raising even higher this year, as we found out. So we've just been audited, and they're acquiring more and more of a gold standard every year. So anyone that's a member on there has been audited and is doing a good job. So you can trust anyone on there. So yeah, and those are really the only two resources. If you have a pool, Portag, PWTAG, spa pools and pools, they're the people to go to for the guidance on looking after those. They have a step-by-step guide on what to do in any circumstance. But apart from that, if it's just general domestic plumbing and tanks and things like this, then the LCA and the HSE are the people to go to.
Okay, fantastic. So people can do some basic learning about what they should and shouldn't do then. Fantastic. Okay, then one last final question. Obviously, we're now coming out of the many restrictions we've had to deal with. People are moving on. Businesses are hopefully returning to somewhere near normal. What do you and your industry see as the new normal going forwards now? What practices are going to come out of all this that perhaps weren't there before? What's the new normal in your world?
I'm hoping more remote monitoring, not just because we're selling it, but I think if you can do more by doing less, that's a win for everyone. If you can install a piece of equipment that is cost effective, it's the same price you're paying now, and it does more than what you're getting at the moment, whilst putting in less effort to do it, then hopefully that's the way forward for all industries, not just ours. And I think there's so much investment going into all this remote monitoring stuff for everything, like Tesla. I've not got a Tesla, but they can tell you everything about your car from LA, and if you're sat in Eastbourne, they can tell in LA if you need your car serviced, that kind of thing. And I think that should be widespread throughout every industry for everything. And it's very inexpensive nowadays. These things don't cost a lot of money anymore. They used to, but not anymore. So I would like to see things go in that direction. And I think just trying to do more things a bit smarter and a bit better, but putting less effort in as well. I would much prefer to see our industry go in that direction, because I think the industry has been very good the last few years in upping our game and doing what we're doing and using the Internet of Things more. So, I would definitely see it to go more in that direction, more computer-based, less paper-based, less regional offices and things like this, and more working from home. That's certainly the direction I'm taking my company into. And I'm pretty sure that's how most industries are going to go after this pandemic, because we're on Zoom now. I hadn't heard of Zoom a year and a half ago. And now it's that I use it as much as I use my phone some days, because the traditional way of doing things was that you'd have a meeting. So you're meeting, you're a sales rep like I was, and you would put your suit on and jump in your expensive car and drive using expensive petrol down expensive roads to have sometimes a 10-15 minute chat. And it might have been an hour or two away. And that's pretty well half your day gone as well. Whereas now I've just done a whole load of chats with my clients, like I say, pressing the reset button on everything and getting them back on route to where they should be going compliance wise. And it's all been done via Zoom or Teams, whichever the client prefers. And it's all done and dusted in sort of like half an hour to an hour. And then I can jump on the next one, and I can talk to 5 or 6 clients in one day just by sitting at my desk. And I have all the information in front of me on my computer as well. So there's less of I'll get back to you in a week or something like this, because I can show them the information via screen share as well. And I realize this is probably old technology for something, but I'm kicking on a bit. And this is brilliant for us, because for me, I've really adopted it quite well. And it's really integrated into my business working life. One other thing I've learned to do is to do videos and WhatsApp them to my engineers, because we try to do an occasional Teams Zoom meeting with all of us together using various devices. And it was difficult because some engineers were on site, some were, it was difficult to get everyone in the same place at the same time with good connection and things like this. So what I ended up doing was filming myself, giving the information, putting up whatever information needed to be on the screen, and then just WhatsApping it out so then they could watch it in their own time. And for me, that's better than a newsletter or anything like that, because it's 4 minutes or whatever it might be, whatever bit of information I need to give out. And you can give out a lot of information in a very small time frame on a video, and it hopefully sticks as well, more than a newsletter might do or an email. So actually, you say that a lot of, sorry to bang on about this, some potential suppliers have sent me personalized videos recently. That's the new thing. So they contact you on LinkedIn, they connect with you, and you go, yeah, okay, fine. You might be, something to do with my industry. And then they film themselves talking, using your name and everything like this, and discussing a problem you may or may not have. But every single one of those I've phoned up to say, thank you very much for the video, because for me, it just seems so more personal than just getting a cut and paste email or a standardized email, which, you and I probably get tens of a day, trying to sell us bits and pieces or introduce themselves or what have you. So yeah, I think video messaging will be a lot more useful in the future. I don't think I've ever sent one to a client. I don't think I'll do that. But
who knows? Yeah, it does sound very, very good.
Yeah, maybe if it was a message I had to give out to everyone, quite quickly or something like that, maybe I would. But for the moment, I do generic emails to my clients, but I don't spam them all the time with stuff. So hopefully they do open mine.
Yeah, but certainly, as you said, for the videos for you guys, when they're, by their nature of their work, they're traveling a lot. So they can pick up those videos as and when they want to. And if they need to be, they can rewatch it. If there's something they've missed or they want to remember what you said before, you don't have to trawl through notes or even give you a call. Now they just rerun the video. So that sounds a really smart idea.
Yeah, and I'm not IT savvy in any way, but it's quite easy to learn. And, you can put pictures up, and if you're discussing a new form template or something like that, you can have it up on the screen and talk through it. So it stops the meetings, and this is the other thing as well, the meetings people have where they get 10, 15 people together to discuss something, and, really only 4 people are talking, that sort of thing. You can do that over Zoom, and or even, like, say, send out a video. If you've got something that needs to be said that requires no questions, then or you're expecting very few questions, for example, then you can just send an instructional video out to say, look, this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it. If you have any questions, email me. But apart from that, You could just send it out and then that's done. You could also on WhatsApp, you can see that people have actually seen it as well. So there's a kind of a little audit trail there just to make sure the information's got out.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, that's great. I see we've come up to our time now. So thanks very much for the information you've shared with everybody, the insights and the new ideas that you're working with as well. I think people will find a lot of useful information for them to review and consider for their own businesses, perhaps.
No, thank you very much for having me.
That's great to have you again. And no doubt I'll see you before long.
Yes, thank you very much, Dave. Cheerio.
Thanks, Iain. Cheers, mate. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So there's another Real Life Buyer podcast. I do hope you enjoyed it and it's given you some ideas and inspiration for greater action and achievement. If you are a purchasing or a supply chain professional, business owner or director, come and join my Facebook group, the Purchasing and Supply Chain Community Hub, a safe place to engage with like-minded, friendly people. See you soon. Bye.